Good evening to you. Mark Studd of HurricaneTrack.com. About 8:30 Eastern Time, July 10th, when I do an update on what we're tracking in the tropics this evening. Some interesting developments, or non-developments as it were. And I want to make sure we don't just jump on the things that look like they might develop and then sort of run away when it doesn't look like it will. That there's no, nothing good comes from that. We got to try to figure things out together, understand as best we can why sometimes different models show what they do, and sometimes they bust and sometimes they don't. So with all that being said, the latest here on our tropical wave out in the open Atlantic, the probability of development now down to 10% over the next 5 days. And you see there, environmental conditions are expected to be only marginally conducive, and development, if any, of this system should be slow to occur over the next several days as it moves westward at about 20 miles per hour. So let's take a look at the satellite picture. This is an unenhanced infrared shot. So it's infrared imagery, but it's not colorized, so to speak. The brighter the whites are, I guess you could say, the higher the cloud tops are, but you get the idea. It's not a visible shot, but it's not a colorized infrared either. And we're going to talk about this little doodad as well, the remnants of TD4. But this is the tropical wave that on Friday, you remember Friday during the day, and that's just a few days ago, both the European model, the ECMWF, and the GFS developed this as it came west, and it looked like it could be a formidable system, maybe even a hurricane. So we did have two major global models, overnight Thursday into Friday, suggesting that would happen. And now it doesn't look as likely, I guess you could say. So we'll just kind of pick the pieces apart and see what we can find out. Boy, look at this over the southeast U.S. and the Carolinas and Georgia. Very strong thunderstorm activity as an upper-level trough comes in. So, yikes. I'm up in Chapel Hill still, and I don't think we have anything nearby, but man, it has been a rough day, especially in the southeast part and along the Outer Banks. But I digress. Let's go look at the vorticity signature, and I have shifted it a little bit west. I wanted to show you a couple of things. First of all, this is what strong vorticity looks like. I'll outline it in yellow. In the Pacific, with Hurricane Eugene, of course, it is spinning down, weakening, but it's at the top of the scale here, very strong spin. And that, my friends, I'll point a little arrow to it. That's a bad-looking arrow, but you get the idea. That's what strong vorticity in a tropical cyclone looks like. And maybe some other action trying to develop in the eastern Pacific. We can address that tomorrow. Nothing threatening land. So here's the vorticity signature of XTD4, and this is the vorticity signature now of the tropical wave that has caused all of this hubbub. I like that word. Hoopla, whatever. And so, it's got the somewhat of a spin to it, but clearly this system here, the remnants of TD4, a little bit more energy associated with it than this system out here. So if we look at the GFS from this evening's run, or the afternoon run, it's the 18Z run, and so it finishes rendering in the evening time. And we'll see what happens here. I'm going to put this into motion for you, and then I can draw on it a little bit while it's going. Going pretty fast here, and you can see the vorticity here of the tropical wave doesn't really increase much on this run, especially as it approaches the islands. So that's great news for you folks down here. You certainly don't want a hurricane. And then it tries to maybe increase a little bit in the southeast Caribbean. And so trying to figure out, well, why did the GFS back off? And will it show something entirely different on the 0Z run? This stuff happens, these models, the GFS anyway, comes out every 6 hours. We get 4 per day, and this can get maddening sometimes. Up until recently, it's like 10 or 12 runs in a row or something like that. It's been showing pretty significant development from that system, and now not so much. So what changed? Well, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know the answer as to what changed between the 12Z and the 18Z, because, the way the data gets assimilated into the models, I don't know every piece of how that works, if a lot of it is satellite derived. I do know that there are no weather balloons launched out here, so there's no upper air soundings per se. So who knows? Maybe it's a blip and it'll come back on the subsequent runs, but there really isn't any other major model support, certainly not from the European, the ECMWF, and the GFS has an upgrade coming, and people refer to that as the GFS Parallel. And, some of the ensemble members of the GFS show development in here. The ensemble meaning that there are multiple versions of the GFS run with different parameters to give you different results. And so it's really just, throw all that out the window and look and see what you have. And, I saw a few things that looked favorable. We all could see that together. We saw the vorticity signature fairly stout, but we really can't get away from one thing. I'm going to look at that in just a minute. I also want you to look at this as we go back. Let's go to the beginning. Here we are at 196 hours. Watch what happens over here with the remnants of TD4 when this loop starts over. There it is there, and notice how it just kind of goes away, fizzles out as it heads towards the Florida Straits. Remember that. In fact, let me just go to the last frame. This is 120 hours out, and you notice you can, where is it? It might be right in here somewhere, but there's hardly anything there. And there's the tiny little reflectivity of the tropical wave. We'll see what happens. So this is interesting, and I guess, this is why July doesn't have much activity. The Saharan air layer, this dry air, is really starting to sort of lay down over and get out in front of this system to the north and west. And anytime these thunderstorms try to develop and pull in air around them towards any kind of rotation that's in here, remember, there is vorticity or spin here, very subtle as it is. It's there. And so this convection that tries to go up pulls air in, and this is exaggerated, but from all directions, and is tapping into some of that Saharan air, no doubt about it. And so maybe the GFS, quote unquote, knows more about that Saharan air layer being present. And there were other factors. I saw Dr. Michael Ventris with WSI Corp, I believe that's who he's with, mentioning that there is a suppressed Kelvin wave moving through the Atlantic, and you'd be like, Mark, what in the world is that? Well, basically, the European model has suggested all along that the Atlantic is not as favorable as the GFS was suggesting it was, so to speak. It's funny because we make these models, and I do, I'm guilty of it, and others, like they're people, that it suggested something, it says something. They're just numbers and, and physical properties programmed into supercomputers. They're not thinking machines, so to speak. You put the numbers in, you get numbers out, and the numbers we see are represented in most cases as maps with swirlies on them, the original fidget spinners, right? I tell you what, it gets maddening sometimes because I'm going to go back and say it again. If there's going to be development, we need to rely on all the models to be in a consensus with each other, and we are nowhere near close to that. And I'm going to show you something, okay? People are banging on the GFS. It's like two college basketball teams or NFL teams rivaling each other. Oh, this team's better than that team, and it just gets crazy. And so, the European is regarded, if you look at the skill scores, as the overall superior global model. I get that. But let's take a look at this. All right, so as the saying goes, riddle me this, Batman. This is the 12Z European from Levi Cowan's website that he has programmed to show this awesome mapness. And again, that guy, a genius, incredible. So thanks to his efforts for making this available so we can look at it. So here it is, the initial conditions from this morning, okay? And the 850 millibar level, the vorticity. And we already know it doesn't show boo down here with our tropical wave. But here is the remnants of TD4. And so let's just march this through the next 5 days, okay? This is the initial. This is 24 hours out. 48 hours out. Yeah, it kind of goes away. It's still there a little bit. 72 hours out, and the system, what's left of it, right here, coming off of Andros Island. And then we go to 96 hours out, and you go to 120 hours out. Oh, it's like, what's that? that's interesting. So, I mean, what do you do? Because the GFS doesn't show this. So when do you start saying, well, the Euro is better, and so the Euro must be right about this if it's also right about this? See all this vorticity strung out through here? How can, I should bang my head against my desk here in my hotel room. I'm in Chapel Hill. I mentioned that earlier, at college orientation for my son. It's just like, really? There's day 5 of the GFS, and no vorticity to speak of in the Gulf of Mexico, and a little bit of vorticity down here, and the European model is like, ooh, wow. And you know what? If we even just go out and look at 144 hours, day 6, come on. It's like, well, hey, I guess it could happen. This is no way at all suggesting that this will become a Katrina. But I remember, and we all do who saw it, in 2005, that the tropical wave, I think it was TD10 or something like that, was coming out this way, died, it got into the Bahamas and re-strengthened into Katrina, came in over South Dade County, Broward, and you remember from there it went on to make history. This is not saying at all that that's going to happen this time. But when you see this coming from nothing, for the most part, we go back, it's like, what the heck? I don't know. And you know what? I think it's good to admit that I don't know. So that's why I do these videos. We can watch it. Somebody questioned, why would you show this, and get people, I don't think they said alarmed, but I like learning together. This is what I'm going to look at, whether or not you guys are on the other side. And you are. We have social media, we have YouTube, and a lot of people are interested in this. And so it's like a saga, and we want to know how the story ends. And sometimes there is no ending, there is no resolution, and there's no closure. The model's just, we don't know. And other times the resolution is there is a hurricane. We think about Matthew last year. The GFS was all over that while it was over Nigeria, for goodness sakes. And it did a great job of forecasting it, the genesis of it, pretty much all along. Brett this year, the GFS, did a pretty good job. We could go on and on about successes and failures between the major models, but at the end of the day, is a hurricane or a tropical storm coming my way? That's what you want to know. And right now, the answer is no. There's nothing headed anybody's way anytime soon. Tomorrow, that might change. So we'll see what happens there. All right, that's about as honest as I can be about it. That's what makes it challenging. That's what keeps me going year after year with this stuff, because there is no perfect playbook as to how things are going to turn out. Remember that movie Back to the Future Part 2, where Biff Tannen got the 50 years of Sports Almanac or whatever it was? I guess it was the first one. Sorry, get my Back to the Futures mixed up. Maybe it was the second one. I don't know. But he had that, he had an advantage because he knew what all the scores were going to be in all the sports games. And in Back to the Future 2, of course, he became this crazy lunatic because he had all that information. Imagine if we had that for hurricanes. Would I become a crazy lunatic? Hopefully not. Sometimes this makes me feel like it, though, because we do want answers, and they're not always easy to come by. All right? So, relax, at least for now. The global models don't suggest a hurricane headed for the Lesser Antilles, and for that we should be thankful. Trust me, and if you know how they are in that area, hurricanes, you agree with me, right? And when they do come, we'll absolutely be on top of it. Have a great rest of your evening. I will do an update in the morning, fairly early, and probably only one update unless something, warrants a second one. So we'll just take it, kind of 12 hours at a time right now. All righty. So have a great rest of your Monday night. I'm Mark Studd of HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning.